Roy Wood Jr., welcome to the show.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
That's my esteemed voice. Well, hello, and good day to you.
I feel like you're already channeling some Britishness there in that
No,
formality.
no, I can't explain it, but like when I get to sit with like legit journalists, I get excited because I'm like, oh, this will be at minimum an intelligent conversation. Even if it's not fun, it'll be smart and exciting and different, and it won't start with let me stop because I'm not trying to insult other people who've been kind enough to have me on their programs, but it's just there's just certain questions that people ask first, and you're like, this is gonna be some bullshit. Oh my God, 29 more minutes to go.
well, let's get into it. Let's see what you think of my first question. So, as a comedian, you spend a lot of time on the road.
My God.
Listen.
I'm kidding. You're great. You're great.
Down. You spend a lot of time on the road, especially early on in your career, doing gigs outside major cities. I want you to imagine that I was an alien from another planet. You could call it England. And I was here and knew nothing about America. How would you describe the state of this country today and the issues it's facing to someone completely foreign?
If someone just came here, I would say that you have people who are more alike than they are different, but they don't realize it because they've been divided by people who benefit from division. I think that would be the biggest thing. I think that, people think of America as an ideal, but America is a corporation.
Oh.
America is a big corporation. It is a corporation compiled by many miniature corporations. And I think together, they're all able to do things that I believe are able to keep people divided, keep people struggling, keep people, underwater. As you said, like touring the country, my first 9 years of comedy, I still lived in Alabama. I was not a coastal comedian. I did not start on the coast. So to have a career in comedy in the South, you have to make money every week, at least, to pay rent. You have to possess the ability to entertain different demographics.
Absolutely.
Because there's no one demo that can sustain you on the road. So it might be trailer parks one week, it might be black people, it might be blue hairs at a casino, it might be a college. So you see the whole gamut of the different types of people. And over the course of writing material to entertain these people, because I didn't want to change my act every demo, it started becoming an exercise in what is the thing that they all have in common? What are the things that they all have in common? So I can talk about that specifically. And so that kind of became the journey. And then as I started growing as a comic, you start realizing, oh, wow, there's a lot of overlap,
Yeah.
And it's, a lot of it is poverty. A lot of it is just really just people trying to struggle to survive for themselves. Also, the other thing that I think a stranger should know about America is that, as humans as a race, we are not communal creatures.
Oh, that's interesting. That goes against a lot of established thinking, which says that we are tribal, we have a fundamental human need to gather. You say no.
There are sub-communities that all care about one another and all look out for each other. But as a race of humans, I don't think so. I think that there is a large swath of this country, especially when you look at voting and issues, everyone wants a candidate that's going to do something for them. What are you going to do for me? And go ahead.
No, I just want to say, is that peculiar to America? Because I know you've traveled a great deal, not just inside this country, but do you think that is something that is unique to America, that particular factionalization, fragmentation that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it's unique to America because America has, some of the most cultural melting pot is the word they love to use, versus other places. That's why I don't think it's always fair to compare America to other countries, especially the countries in Europe, where traditionally they have more of a wholeness culturally, if you will. And some of that may come from just the countries just being smaller.
Mhm.
I know
Mhm.
it's not like that everywhere else around the world. I know India has, a serious caste system, and that it's not a one-to-one to America, but there's definitely a more delineated have and have-nots across the world. But within those subgroups in America, I feel like there is definitely more of a us first. What are you going to do for us? So you look to the politician that's going to do something for you, even if it's at the detriment of everyone else in America. And I think that's the thing that separates humans from other animals. I talked about it in my comedy special, my last special. But I watch all these. I have a 6-year-old, and at the time when I was writing the special, we were just watching nature videos during the quarantine or whatever. And when it floods, a colony of fire ants collect in a ball, and they float to wherever there's dry land, and that's where they set up shop next. But once the,
Mhm.
the storm surge comes in, floods the nest, they get into a ball, and the ball is a rotating it's just a rotating ball of ants floating, and there's ants on the bottom that are drowning, waiting for their turn to come back up to the top to get air, and that's how the ball revolves. But every now
Wow.
and then a couple of ants drown. All the ants don't make the journey, but they all contribute to the floating of the fire ant race, if you will.
Y-
There are
Or you,
not
or,
many
or
there are
you,
not
Roy,
many
would shoot.
Americans like, imagine watching it with a 4-year-old eating
I was
graham
just
crackers,
thinking about that.
and he's just having a good time watching the fires, and I'm just thinking,
And you're like, whoa,
wow,
if in the pandemic people had come together and rolled as
the
one.
human race ain't gonna make it. Oh Lord, we're not willing to drown for one another. In
No,
America, at least. I'm not gonna speak about the
no.
world. I don't perform a lot globally. I have, but not enough to speak about other cultures. But in America, there aren't enough groups willing to drown for the greater good of America.
So let me ask you this. I often think of comedians as being sort of um, anthropologists, really capturing the vagaries and nuances of life, and that's what they distill down into comedy. Um, Talk to me about your beginnings. You mentioned, being raised in Alabama and, in Birmingham. What was that like as we talk about your environment and absorbing those nuances?
Birmingham is a different place. It's similar in the sense that Birmingham is similar to Atlanta in the fact that the joke is that Atlanta is surrounded by Georgia,
Yes, I
and
lived in Atlanta for 10 years.
okay, so then it's once you get outside of Cobb County, Fulton
Mm-mm,
County, it's a little
mm-mm,
different over there in Villa
mm-mm. I
Rica
don't do
and down
that.
there.
I don't do that.
Yeah, once you get past Lawrenceville, it's a little dicey at night. And so Birmingham is similar in that regard, that it is about a 75% black city. It is a blue county surrounded by red.
Surrounded.
Most of the counties surrounding Jefferson County in Alabama, Trump won those counties by almost 95%, with 95 points,
Wow. I did not know that.
like straight sweeps. Like that's the disparity between those two areas. So when you grow up in this weird kind of all black. I stayed on the black side of town. I went to public schools. They were all majority black. I probably had total until college, maybe 4 or 5 white classmates.
Mm.
Like once I got to high school, the number went up to like 10, maybe 20 out of a
Still,
600 student body.
yeah.
Like, that has a way of skewing your view of the world a little bit. And I think that I lived a life, from my father, who was a civil rights journalist, and my mother, who's been in higher ed and educating black minds for, coming up on 40 years now, and then going to Florida A&M, which is a black college.
Yeah.
I was raised in this spirit of prepare for the world, because what's out there and for whatever's beyond the horizon ain't like Birmingham, and it ain't like FAMU. So
Mm.
just be aware of what has happened in our lives, and be aware of how that could, change you going forward. When
Was
you
it an
run into
intense?
those types of, yeah,
Was
yeah.
it
I mean,
intense? It feels like when I was thinking about your childhood as I prepared for our conversation, I couldn't help but think that it was a childhood framed by issues and conversation about meaningful, important things. And then I read about your father giving you the birds and the bees talk after they found
The
your flesh
Playboys.
mags,
To be fair,
in the living room.
to be
Roy would.
fair,
Who puts
those were
the?
his flesh mags that he put in the house that I then
But
hid
you
under the
put
couch.
in the couch or under
I
the
was gonna
couch
put him
in the
back
living
in the
room.
stash spot. His stash spot shouldn't have been in the house. That's on him. It's his fault. Yeah. So yeah, my father's always been big on educating me. Oh, you're gonna look at a flesh mag? We'll go upstairs and get the encyclopedia, and we're gonna learn everything. We're gonna draw charts. We're gonna learn about vast difference. We're gonna learn fallopian, like every word you're gonna learn. So I would say though, my home was a little more intense because of just what my parents went through coming up, dealing with racism in the segregated South. But growing up in Birmingham, growing up as a black child in a black city in a black side of town, it was very jovial. Like there was a lot of
Yeah.
celebration. They definitely worked to teach us our history. Like knowing what I know now, like you probably shouldn't be showing roots to third graders, but they did. We were assigned a ton of books by black authors. We also had to read The Hobbit, and Animal Farm and stuff like that. But it wasn't all the white people that go get you. But you did take a lot of field trips to civil rights museums. I remember distinctly, we were still living in Memphis in the first grade. We took a field trip to Alex Haley's house
Oh, wow.
in the first grade. They were like, come learn about this dude. So
And you thought what as a 6, 7-year-old?
nothing. We're going to a house. Did we go to McDonald's? Are we stopping at McDonald's on the way back to school? Because every field trip was just about going to McDonald's. And when you get older, you realize, oh, wow, they were trying to just give us some degree of culture, just trying to give us something, to embed. And, we can make the argument of how early you should start the racism and enslavement conversation with kids about, the history of this country. But it didn't seem intense until I got outside of that. When I
Mhm.
started traveling, you start meeting other people whose experiences, were different, especially in college when I started meeting, as I like to call it, the spectrum of blackness, the diaspora.
Oh, but I do like you acknowledge that because that is something that, and I've seen that in your stand up. You acknowledging the diaspora of blackness and maybe some of the blind spots African Americans have to that.
Yeah, I think that, but then that goes back to the division point and the whole corporation aspect of that. It works great to keep melanated folks divided and thinking that they have some sort of ranking or system. I can't I can't remember who said it, and I'm sure a bunch of people have said it, but they said the only difference between black people is just where the slave ship dropped you off.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start there, and then you start really peeling back a lot of the history of black people that did not start their heritage journey in America, you go, oh damn, y'all was
Mm-hmm.
getting whooped on too. Y'all was going through struggle too. Y'all had issues too. So it's like we're all traumatized. We're all, and I think the more we knew about that, the better off we would be in America in understanding, Africans coming over or Black Brits coming over or, Caribbeans, people from the Caribbean. Did I just say Caribbeans like that was a race of people? Them Caribbeans.
Then Caribbean. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
We're all one.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I hear you say that, and I hear the keen observations that you obviously sit and you think about, and once again, the research that goes into your comedy, which you've talked a great deal about, and I can't help but think that your father was a civil rights journalist in the 60s and 70s. You talked about how photos, if you look at them with Dr. King, he's probably like three rows behind. He's there somewhere.
Yeah.
And you go from all of that, you come from that, a mother who's an educator, and you're a comedian.
So here's what's wild about that. I went to school for journalism, and I
know.
have two older brothers that are also one was an assignment desk editor and EP for various stations in America for 20 years. The other one was an reporter, then anchor
Mhm.
over the course of like a 20-year arc. And I didn't want to do anything that they were doing, you know. But then I saw Stuart Scott. There's a handful of journalists that kind of lit the fire for me. Stuart Scott, Fred Hickman at the time at CNN SI. There was another gentleman at Headline News named Van Earl Wright, who
Mhm.
did like funny, kooky, like just the way he talked and intonated was just different, and it was humorous. And then also Jenny Moose from
Ah,
CNN.
yeah.
Jenny, it was always offbeat, quirky observation, and Stuart Scott looked like me and sounded like me, and I was like, okay, well, I can be funny and talk about sports, right? Okay, journalism. And so I get into journalism, and the more I looked at stand up, the more I looked at the kind of comedian that, first off, the first 10 years of my comedy career, let's write that off. That was just me learning.
Okay.
That's the internship.
Okay.
Like, okay, I told a bunch of jokes that I'm like, all right, that joke wasn't funny, but that joke got me to the next year of comedy. As I started looking at the world and trying to find different perspectives on issues, the more I looked at it, I just started trying to construct my jokes like a journalistic, like making an argument, making a case. What are the both sides? What has everyone said about this issue? Okay, what has not been said that I could say? And then seeing, like, going on message boards and really digesting all of the discourse on whatever the issue is I've talked about. What has everybody said, so I can make sure I'm bringing something new to the conversation, which I think is the job of a decent journalist, is to at least
Mhm.
present you with new information and not regurgitate everything else that's been done. And that's when I realized that, when going with my father to all of these speaking engagements, my dad used to take me with him. He would speak to black mayors, he would speak at black churches. I remember distinctly in 1993, National Association of Black Journalists, they
Mhm.
give my father an award. He gets a Lifetime Achievement Award in 93 from
Oh,
NABJ.
wow.
And we go to Houston, and you can Google this because this is true. The Chicago Cubs, my team, were in town in
Right?
Houston the same weekend, performing at the Astrodome right across the street from the hotel. And my fucking father would not let me go to that baseball game. And
Priorities, Roy.
I'm like eighth grade, ninth grade. I'm old enough to go by myself, dude. Just let me go. And he just goes, nope, you need to see this.
He
And
was shaping you.
it wasn't about the award. It was all of those black people in that
Mhm.
space and
Mhm.
seeing them all unified under one goal of doing something. And that kind of came rushing back to me as my comedy started changing. My comedy probably changed the most when I got to the Daily Show, which my first hour special didn't come out until after I got the Daily Show, which I'm
Which is
also thankful for.
2015. 2015,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
what would you say is your motivation? Could you identify what motivates your comedy now? I mean, obviously, your father, and I know fathers and sons and drawing direct lines can be fraught, and you have referenced this in previous conversations somewhat. But, obviously, your father was committed to drawing attention to the ills and the challenges of this country.
Yes.
What is your motivation? What drives your comedy?
I think it was that for a while. I think it's pivoted a little bit now, though, in terms of where I want to head with what I want to talk about. I've talked about or tried to draw attention to or tried to be humorous about the ills of the country, as you say. But I think that there's something that resonates in being able to share your own feelings and experiences, and that also being a tool of connecting with strangers. Because up front, my jokes are, hey, we're all arguing about this, but have we as a group considered this?
Mhm.
Stand for the anthem. It's my second special. Stand for the anthem or take a knee for the anthem. That was always the argument. Stand or kneel, stand or kneel. Okay, but also the anthem is a terrible song. Is there a song that we would all stand for? Let's explore that. And then that becomes the joke. Now, if I was doing that journalistically, that would be a man on the street segment where I'm just asking random Americans, hey, what song would you stand for if not the anthem?
Right.
I'd stand for Beyonce. I'd stand for that.
Alien
So
superstar.
mine is Bruno Mars 24 Karat. That, I think everybody would stand for that. So that became the exploration. Whereas now I'm like, man, there's something about parenting. And I think that there's something, and I've used these words to describe my father in the past, great father, okay husband. Like you fumbled a few balls there, coach. There's room for improvement on that side of your things. And my father passed when I was 16, so and I'm 43 now, so there's a lot that I did not learn from him that I learned from someone.
Right.
So who were those people, and what did I learn, and when did I learn it? Because those people weren't trying to teach it. How and why did I absorb that? How much did community play a role in shaping who I am after my father passed? And that's the exploration that I'm on now. I did Finding Your Roots with Dr. Henry Louis Gates, and it ravaged my brain.
Aren't you distantly related to John Lewis?
Yeah, second cousin. Found that out on the show too. And what does he do? Run around and talk about the ills of this nation.
It's in the bloodline.
Is it? That's the thing. It's like, no matter what I didn't want to become when I was 14 and 15, I ain't doing journalism. I was going to be a firefighter. That was the plan. Was to be a firefighter, go straight to the academy at 18, retire at 33, just like my friend Big Mike back home. He retired at 30. That boy living good right now. And got a good grill and good grass. That's what every black man in the South just wants, a nice barbecue grill and quality Bermuda side to run his feet through. That was my plan. But, fate has a way of bringing you back to where, you're supposed to be.
And what you're running from sometimes. Are there areas that you think comedy can broach, or are there issues comedy can tackle and spaces it can broach that journalism, it's just more problematic or more fraught? I mean, how would you describe the power of comedy, particularly given how you've described this country and where we are today? Talk to me about that philosophy.
To me, stand-up comedy is the most powerful form of journalism. It's more powerful. It's more effective in the
Oh,
quicker
interesting.
sense.
Because it's more immediate? Because it's more visceral?
Immediate. Because it's more immediate, because it's more visceral, and because it's allowed to plug into people's emotions out the gate, be it good or bad. Stand-up comedians have the luxury of attaching themselves to an emotion that journalists don't. Journalists can eventually get to that point, but you have to prove and write a thesis, and that's also one of the things that's also part of why I really hate that print journalism does not get the respect that I believe it should get, when so many stories are breached by print and not broadcast.
Yeah, very true.
Because print has the ability to really get into the granular, deeper, nuanced parts of something. Whereas broadcast, this, boom, 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 quick. And here's a 3 minute, here's the story you missed last week. And comedy has a way of kind of oscillating between those two disciplines. The comedian can be quick if they want, or they can sit in the pocket on something. And for as long as I'm making you laugh, an average of 2 times a minute, or if you Jerry Seinfeld, 4 laughs a minute.
Is this some statistic that you guys have as comedians?
Yeah, when you do late night sets, they count your laughs per minute.
They do not.
Yeah, it's a stupid metric, and it's not a be all end all. You could go 60 seconds without a laugh, but that laugh after 60 seconds better be good. 2 laughs. Sometimes that's how some late night bookers, and they always bring it back to Seinfeld. Seinfeld, 4 laughs a minute, just a bang, 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 bang. Um, so yeah, I think that comedians, I think that comedy has the ability to broach topics. Here's the downside to stand-up comedy.
Okay.
Stand-up comedy is not research. Stand-up comedy, more often than not, is not always spoken from an educated place. Stand-up comedy also does not necessarily honor pushback or assessing something from both sides. And also, most stand-ups, they ain't doing follow-ups. you know, like
Let me pick
Chappelle,
up on what I just said there, and or
yeah,
that that
Ch-
heckle.
Chappelle might be the only one to do a second special addressing something from the first special,
Hmm.
and even that was from a more argumentative place. So it's not necessarily a place where you're going to get all of the information, stand-up comedy, but you will get an introduction to what the conversation is. And I think there are a lot of people in this country that are more pliable to that than they are journalism, because comedy is an easier spoonful of sugar to digest.
I mean,
Maybe if you did late night news on a big ass stage with flashy lights, maybe if the news had a Netflix special, maybe we'd watch that boring ass shit.
well, you touch on something that I was really stunned by when I first moved here. I came to America in 2005 and packed my bags and, didn't exactly sail over from the UK, but 2005 I got here. And I was surprised to learn that most young people, at least a significant proportion of young people, get their news and shape their opinions from The Daily Show.
Yep,
I mean, again, I guess you're
they
laughing.
do.
Why are you laughing?
They do, because I'm like, don't trust us. Like, you can get some news, you get awareness from the Daily Show. I don't think you get all the news, all the story, but we're still a comedy program first, and that's always going to have limitations on everything that we can do. There's certain stories that get pitched that we aren't able to do simply because there is no joke, because it is so sad.
Right.
I get DMs from people around the world, which is probably the toughest part of the Daily Show, is getting messages from people that are in areas where wild shit is happening. And it's something that we just cannot quantify into a joke. We can mention it, but we'll never be able to get into the depth with the big word alert efficacy. There we
Mm-hmm.
go. Did I get that
Mm-hmm.
one out right? I
Yeah,
think I
you
nailed it.
did. Yeah, you did.
We will never be able to touch certain traumatic events with the level of efficacy that a proper media outlet would do. There's stories that I see on Vice News. I'm like, damn, man, I wish I could be embedded with the drug lords and like that type of stuff. I remember when the United States left Afghanistan,
Right.
and everything that was happening at the airport in Kabul. I can't speak for all of the correspondents, but some of us were getting DMs from people that were trying to get into the airport.
Incredible.
What do you do with that? What do
Yeah.
like that? There's certain things, there are certain atrocities that are happening in this world that are going to be beyond the reach of the Daily Show because of the limitations of that humor puts on
Yeah.
being able to talk about certain things.
But you do use your platform and your visibility to tackle issues. You've made alliances. You champion childhood literacy back in Alabama. You during the pandemic you worked on helping other comedians stay financially afloat. Why is that important to you? You have just touched on the limitations of the Daily Show. Is that a direct response to being maybe restricted there, or is this back to your childhood?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. The cool thing that I'll always give Trevor Noah is that, I was never told no on a story that I wanted to do or that I thought about wanting to do. It's just a matter of how do we make it funny? Where are the joke? Where are the jokes? What are the notes that connect the information? And there's certain stuff that when the pandemic hit, I'm always thankful because I feel like my career is rooted in innumerable people who chose to help me, who didn't have to. You know, there's I won't get into the weeds, but like there's just been a lot of times where I've been down bad and I've had someone that would do a single favor that opened four more doors, and they're not even aware that what they did, how much it was able to help me. So you just try to do the same. When we were doing Comedy Gives Back when the pandemic first started, when all the comedy clubs shut down, that was me immediately remembering my first 9 years on the road from Alabama. And if all you do is tell jokes to pay your bills and now there is no place to go and tell the joke, you're in a bad spot.
Totally. Yeah.
And most of those comedians were already living check to check as it is. So it's like you can't, like I remember having a gig one time and the gig canceled on the way.
Oh.
And that gig was my gas money home.
Oh.
That's
What did you?
how
Oh.
comedians live. I slept in my car at a truck stop and I woke up the next morning and I went to a day labor place and I worked for, daily work, daily pay. And I did construction for 8 hours so I could have $40 to get home. Got my check, went to a check cashing spot, paid 5% to get the check cash, went and put some gas in my car, drove home. Went to sleep. My mom goes, "How was the gig?" "Great." I wasn't gonna tell her the truth. she doesn't need to know I'm asleep in a Ford Focus,
Oh my God.
crying softly.
She's like, why didn't you go through that journalism?
Yeah, but those are the people that are out there. I think that there was a segment that we did about gun violence in Chicago and how Black people are a part of combating that, because that's always the narrative that Black people don't care about.
No,
Black
we
on
just
black
kill it.
crime.
We just kill each other, and we don't really
Yeah,
care.
we only care about when the police kill her. Not true. There's 1,000 groups out there doing the right thing.
A lot of local pastors running groups in Chicago, trying to bring groups together.
But if the media don't put that out there, then who's ever going to know? So, I pitch it to Trevor. He's with it. And it ended up being a piece that was it was a little more serious than it was funny, but it had jokes. And you start learning about people that are part of the solution to a lot of systemic issues, and then how these issues are not all rooted in one single thing. And I really do believe about that illiteracy to prison pipeline. And when you look at the statistics, if everybody wants to believe stats, there is a correlation between education and the likelihood of you going to jail. So yeah, if there's a program in Birmingham like I See Me that's putting books in the hands of city school kids, I'm a city school product, and the books have imagery of Black children so you can see yourself doing something bigger, so you can hopefully imagine yourself doing something bigger and greater, then yeah, I'm gonna do what I can to support that, because I know at the end of the day that's going to help millions of people. And I can only worry about these problems happen everywhere, but for me, I care a lot about the city of Birmingham and trying to make that place and doing what I can with my gift to pour back into that community that poured into me. At the end of America's a big country, and everybody, well, what about this issue? What about that? Hey man, ain't but 24 hours in a day, and 12 of them I'm gonna be asleep. I'm
12.
give or take, if I ain't got the boy. Hey, that is where I choose to put my time. Like I like to think of when the human race is functioning efficiently, and this is part of what's happened. This is part of what I believe has been disassembled to a degree over the years, especially in the Black community. I believe that when functioning efficiently, we're social, but we're kind of a beehive where,
Right.
in a beehive, everybody has a job and you just do that
And
job.
there's a queen. Sorry, just want to
Oh,
throw that
yes,
out there.
there's
Just
a
want to throw
queen.
that out there.
Yes.
There's a queen. I didn't want that to get
Yeah,
lost in your beehive
yeah, a
story.
queen.
Okay,
Yeah,
just wanted
Beyonce.
to throw that there. I want to throw that out there. Do you worry about being cancelled? Because
No.
as you talk about, obviously you talk about the issues, you use your platform to shine a light on issues, but that can be tricky in this day and age. You mentioned Dave, a little while ago. Is that ever on your mind that there are red lines, there are places and issues that I should just leave alone?
No, you can't worry about that because that line also slides. The line of cancellation is also something that moves and is very fluid based on how society changes. I remember, oh, I got suspended when I did morning. I did morning radio for like 10 years
What do you
after
do?
I graduated. And it was a prank call and it was just a lot of cussing. It was just cussing in the prank call or whatever. And somebody called the station and complained.
Mm-hmm.
And I got suspended. And this was right after the Janet Jackson
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl. And so for
Nipplegate.
people, yeah, Nipplegate. That same prank call was a prank call from the vault that had aired for a year on the station pre-Nipplegate. But this time,
right,
I got suspended for it. And when they broke it down, there were new FCC guidelines that were coming out. And the FCC was basically fining stations $100K per word offense. So even if you curse, but it was bleep, but it's still implied and people could understand it, if someone complained, that is enough for them to be able to file an FCC complaint. FCC considers indecency based on the guidelines as set by the public at large within that community. So I learned my lesson about canceling.
How much did you cost the station?
They didn't get fined. They reprimanded me on the air. They basically flung me up the flagpole in display to this listener to keep that listener from escalating correct.
Sure.
If a listener calls and complains and you do nothing, what you think they're gonna do after that? They're gonna call the feds.
Mm-hmm.
So I got ran up the flagpole for a prank call that was all good a year ago, but this year somebody had a problem with it, so now I'm suspended. All right, cool. So at that point, you just have to try and be funny. And you can try and operate within the guidelines and hope. But if someone's going to have a problem with what you say, they're going to have a problem with what you say. And as a comedian, as an entertainer, as whatever you are as a performer, I don't think there's a lot you can do about that other than walking out the door every day, walking on stage and saying what you think is funny and saying what you think is true. Now, the flip side is that you can't get mad when somebody get pissed off about it. I don't think entertainers today, I don't think they want freedom of speech. They want freedom of venue.
Oh,
And
just walk me
can't
through that.
have
They don't want freedom of speech. They want freedom of venue.
freedom of venue and freedom from consequence. You don't get freedom from consequence. There might be consequence. And I think when a lot of people say cancel culture, I think they mean consequence, because I don't think that there is an entertainer that is pissed off a bunch of people that isn't still out there getting money. So are they getting less money? Absolutely. You're not going to get as much money as you would have gotten because
Right.
you said the bad thing. But if there are people that are willing to pay money to see you, and there's a venue that is willing to book you, are you canceled?
Okay, I want to pick up on what you just said. They don't want freedom of speech, they want freedom of venue. So I've got to ask you then, how did you feel about the whole Chris Rock thing? Because that came with consequence. He used the
Yeah,
venue freely and then he got whooped by Will Smith. How
yeah.
did you feel about that? How do you place that in this context?
I think the Chris Rock situation is just a lack of awareness that Will Smith would have actually come up on the stage and slapped her. But if the next year the Oscars told the next host, hey, no jokes about anybody that's in the audience, and then that host goes out and starts doing jokes about people in the audience, and then we don't see that host on stage for the rest of the night. Like, that's getting canceled.
Yeah.
I'm talking in a sense that, like, people get mad that they get kicked off Twitter because they said something that the community at large decided was obscene. That is what defines obscenity. And I think that's where the line gets a little blurred, because you got a lot of people who ain't got a journalism degree
That's
out here with a
true.
microphone acting like they a journalist and then getting mad when they get held to the fire. So I think that you will always have the right to say whatever you want to say, but you might just get beat down and deplatformed to the point where you are just going to have to be the dude in the park on a bullhorn.
They call them crazy, right? Those people who
Yeah,
are the dude in the
yeah,
park with the bullhorn, just
yeah. Now they
bragging.
call them podcasters. So
Thanks
it's
for that. Thanks.
no
All right.
disrespect, not you. You actually study this. I mean, that's where Kanye's headed. Like, Kanye is in a situation where he's going to get everything stripped down, and so far everything is getting stripped away. But if Kanye West wants to walk outside and go, "Ya, ya, 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 ya," he is free to do that. But you
But
don't
he's
get
not
freedom
coming.
of, but you
No,
don't get freedom of platform. You don't
and
get
he's not
freedom
coming from
of.
a place of, not that anything he said is humorous or right or proper, acceptable, but he's coming from a place of hate. I mean, he's coming from a place of venom with the things
Of
that he
course,
said.
of course. But what I'm saying is that there are people who will not. There are people out there who don't agree that he should have been deplatformed.
Yes. Yeah.
No, this is my platform. I built my platform, and if I decide I don't want your ass on my platform, get your ass off my platform. That too is freedom. That's capitalism. I can kick you out my store. No shoes, no shirt, no service. Remember that?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the OG. That's the OG Twitter ban. I don't like your outfit. Get out my store. Well, you don't have a right to do. Yes, I do.
So, so speaking of running people off or out, you somehow successfully did that with Trevor.
My plan is in motion. I had no idea he was going to do that after I said that to him, just for the record.
I was like, dude, really?
He
I saw your
paused
tweet.
after
You're like, I should have just kept my mouth shut.
he paused briefly when I said it, so I could see him process it, and then he went on about the day. I didn't know that it was like all of these other calculations, and then the next day, yes, I'm stepping down from the Daily Show. Roy told me it's been 7 years, and you know what? That's a good time to leave. Whoa, bro. I was saying it from a, hey man, way to go. Today's 7 years, man.
Consequences. Back to the
Yeah.
consequences.
I'm
when
no
you-
longer congratulating no one about anything ever.
So as we bring this to a close, because you are talking to me on a day that you've also got Daily Show commitments. I mean, now that you've basically run him off and he's leaving soon. No
Put my own
shoes.
job in jeopardy.
Well, first of all, how do you feel about this chapter with Trevor coming to an end? Let's start there.
I think we did a lot of good work. And I think once Trevor is out of the chair, there's going to be a lot of stuff leaking about just what he did in that building to, build people up and give a lot of opportunities to a diverse array of people, and not just, domestically, but, people from overseas as well, being able to come in and have a hand in putting a footprint on a show that became more diverse at a time where the discussion and issues around diversity were basically bubbling up to the forefront, from women's rights and disability to trans rights to Black people to Black Lives Matter. Like, that show was the perfect show to be on at that time to help make sense of all of that, especially once social media made us more interconnected globally. I think that really created a show that was able to speak to things that were going on around the globe, but also showing how those things still connect to what's happening here in America. Like I said earlier, my first two stories out the door when I had started at the Daily Show was police reform. Jordan Klepper and I went to Appleton, Wisconsin, a month after they'd had an unarmed killing. Their police department killed an unarmed black man, and we were there with them talking to them about their anti-bias training. So, no, it might not have been. It might have been almost a year after the killing, but we did a ride along with a police department that had a bad shoot that killed an innocent boy, and that was powerful. My second piece was the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. So, you want to talk about the type of stuff he was greenlighting, Chicago police stuff, like Chicago gun violence and stuff. Like, he definitely he gave the correspondent, I can only speak as a correspondent, he gave us space to cover the things that matter to us.
Right.
It wasn't about his vision no, that's not what I want. Like, no, what do you care about? Because I know that's what you're going to go out and actually work at and actually try and bring back something decent. So follow the things that you find interesting, and that's what we were allowed to do, and allowed to do that for 7 years. And I can't ask for anything better than that.
So with him, as the kids would say, getting up out of that chair, are you climbing into it? I'm just asking for a friend.
I want to continue at the Daily Show in whatever capacity they see fit.
Don't give me that answer.
I'm not. I'm being straight up. No,
have you had meetings? Have you had meetings about it?
There's been a million conversations about what the fuck they're gonna do next. They're still deciding. We got to get to Atlanta and get through midterms, he said. Now, we have to put one foot in front of the next,
Now you're channeling your dad. That is straight up channeling your father. I felt that.
It would be an honor to be asked, like that would be dope. But even if I'm not asked, it would be an honor to stay. Like, it's still a dope ass job, and I still get to take a camera to strange places and show people what the hell is going on in the world. And I think for as long as I have that chance, I'm happy wherever I am.
Well, Roy Wood Jr., it's been a huge privilege and a huge joy speaking to you and seeing how you use your voice, your humor, and your platform to do good. So thank you. Keep on doing it. And if you get the job, I'm coming on the show. I'm just going to show up like an African auntie. I'm just going to show up.
Fair enough. Where is Roy? That's my African accent. I just tried.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Let's leave it on a high.
Yeah, I'll stop right there.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you, Roy.
Yeah.